If you can lose 40 pounds on medication, but you cannot maintain your weight without it, did you actually solve the problem? That's the question almost nobody is asking right now. And before anybody gets defensive, let me say this. This video is not about shaming people for taking GLP-1 medications. It's not about calling anyone lazy. And it's not about pretending obesity is simple. It's also not about me trying to sell against these medications. In fact, I have absolutely nothing to gain whether someone takes them or not. What I do care about deeply is whether people are asking smart questions before they put themselves on a medication that may affect appetite, digestion, muscle mass, metabolism, behavior patterns, and potentially long-term health. Because after working in health, nutrition, metabolism, and behavior change for over 30 years, I'm seeing some very concerning patterns emerge. Not because the medications don't work. They absolutely work for appetite suppression and weight loss. The issue is, what kind of weight are people losing? What behaviors are they changing? And what happens after the medication? Because later comes really fast. And I think there are conversations happening right now around GLP-1s that are way too simplistic. We're acting like weight down equals problem solved. Not necessarily. So today, I want to talk honestly about lean muscle loss, metabolism adaptation, protein intake, behavior change, long-term maintenance, possible risks, and the questions every person should be asking before, during, and after taking a GLP-1 medication. And yes, some of this may sound more direct than what you're hearing online. However, I think people deserve common sense right now because there is a lot of money being made in this space. And whenever huge amounts of money are involved, smart people should slow down long enough to ask better questions. So let's start here. One of my biggest concerns with GLP-1 medications is not simply weight loss. It's how the weight is being lost. Because many people taking these medications are dramatically under eating. And if nutrition and resistance training are not handled strategically, too much of that weight loss can come from lean tissue, muscle. That is a major problem because muscle is metabolically active tissue. Your muscle mass helps to support metabolism, insulin sensitivity, blood sugar regulation, strength, mobility, recovery, aging quality, and long-term weight maintenance. And yet I'm watching people celebrate losing 30 pounds. Okay, but how much muscle did you lose? Because if the answer is a lot, you may have unintentionally made long-term weight maintenance even harder. And this is the part people love to say, I'll worry about that later. No, later happens pretty damn fast, especially after 40. You do not wake up one day at 65 wishing you had less muscle. And here's what concerns me. Many people are not receiving proper nutrition coaching alongside these medications. They're not learning about protein targets, meal structure, strength training, hunger regulation, maintenance strategies, behavior awareness. They're simply eating less, sometimes much less. And if you eat a nutritionally poor diet before the medication, you can easily end up eating the same poor quality diet during and afterwards, just in smaller amounts. That's not nourishment. That's undernourishment. And one of the biggest issues I see clinically is protein. People dramatically underestimate how much protein they actually need while losing weight, especially women over 40. And now add appetite suppression, smaller portions, reduced hunger cues, fear of eating too much, and suddenly protein intake falls through the floor. That is not a good recipe for long-term success. Because if protein is inadequate while body weight is dropping, the body becomes far more likely to pull from lean tissue. And again, Why would we intentionally drive metabolism downward if we don't have to? So it is time to get strategic. This is where I really need you to hear me. If you're taking a GLP-1 right now and you're not receiving nutrition and exercise guidance, please get some now, not later, because eventually one of two things usually happens. You stay on the medication indefinitely, you come off the medication, and if you come off the medication without learning how to eat, how to maintain, how to structure meals, how to train, how to regulate behaviors, how to support muscle mass, what exactly is the exit strategy? That's one of the biggest questions I want people asking. What is my exit strategy? Am I learning how to eat for the rest of my life? Or am I outsourcing appetite regulation to a medication without building any long-term skill set? Because medications can suppress appetite. They do not automatically teach self-awareness, consistency, emotional regulation, stress management, meal planning, discipline, identity change. Those things still matter. And let's talk honestly about Regain for a minute, because now we've watched enough people cycle through GLP-1 use that we're seeing initial loss, medication discontinuation, weight regain, and then consideration of restarting the medication again. And when regain happens, people need to ask themselves a very important question. What behaviors led me to regain the weight? Not, which medication do I restart? Behavior change matters. And I know some people don't like hearing that because behavior work is slower and less exciting than a prescription. But behavior is what determines sustainability, not temporary appetite suppression. And listen carefully. I'm not saying every person regains because they're weak or irresponsible. Biology absolutely matters here. Appetite signaling changes, hormones change, hunger often increases after discontinuation, but behavior still matters too. Both things can be true simultaneously. And this is where I think some providers are failing people, because there are clinics everywhere selling GLP-1s like candy without meaningful conversations about muscle preservation, protein, training, long-term maintenance, nutritional adequacy, or psychological dependency. And I think people need to follow the money trail a little bit. That doesn't mean every provider is unethical, not at all. But whenever there's massive financial incentive attached to something, consumers need to ask smarter questions. That's just common sense. And while we're talking common sense, can we please stop using GLP-1s to lose the last 5 to 15 pounds? Nope. I'm going to be direct here. If you are relatively healthy, functioning well, and the goal is simply you want to be slightly leaner, learn how to eat and train correctly with this stage of life instead of immediately reaching for a pharmaceutical shortcut, especially because these medications are not without potential side effects and risks. Some reported concerns include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, so much fun, I know, delayed gastric emptying, gallbladder issues, pancreatitis, muscle loss, rebound hunger, fatigue, and potentially unknown long-term side effects that we don't even understand yet. And that last part matters because these medications are relatively new in widespread long-term use. I'm not convinced we fully understand yet the downstream implications. That does not mean that they're automatically dangerous. It means humility is appropriate. And I wish more people in healthcare were comfortable saying, we do not fully know yet. That's an intellectually honest answer. Now, does that mean there's never a role for GLP-1s? No. For some individuals, they may be absolutely appropriate and helpful. But I want people approaching these medications thoughtfully, not emotionally, impulsively, or desperately. Because desperation rarely produces good long-term decision-making. Here are the questions I wish more people would ask before starting. What's my exit strategy? How will I preserve my muscle mass? Am I strength training consistently? How much protein do I actually need? What habits am I building while appetite is suppressed? What happens if I stop the medication? Am I learning maintenance skills? Am I emotionally dependent on food? Am I emotionally dependent on the medication? Am I pursuing health or just smaller body weight? Those are very different conversations. And that's what I want for people. Self-empowerment, autonomy, awareness, the ability to understand your own body, behaviors, hunger patterns, and lifestyle deeply enough that you're not constantly dependent upon another medication, another quick fix, another restart, or another panic solution. Because ultimately, sustainable health still comes back to nourishment, movement, muscle, recovery, also consistency, and behavior change. The fundamentals still matter, even when medications enter the picture. So if I can leave you with one thought today, it's this. Do not let rapid weight loss distract you from long-term health strategy. Smaller is not automatically healthier. Lighter is not automatically stronger. And appetite suppression is not the same thing as sustainable wellness. Ask better questions. Protect your muscle. Learn how to eat. Build behaviors that can survive after the medication. And most importantly, stay engaged in your own health instead of outsourcing all responsibility to a prescription. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe. This channel is for women over 40 who want intelligent, realistic, evidence-based conversations. Realistic, evidence-based conversations about metabolism, nutrition, body composition, and sustainable health without gimmicks, shame, or panic marketing. And if you're currently taking a GLP-1 or considering one, I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments. What questions do you think more people should be asking?